Welcome to another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love, hosted by Richard Osler. My guests on today's podcast are my friends calling in from Indiana, Krista and Greg Evans. Welcome to the podcast, you two.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for having us.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I like that. Yeah. Greg. I became aware of the Evans this week when I came across a Facebook post where they talked about their wonderful son, Luke, who died of suicide in November of 2019, roughly a year from when we're recording this podcast. Great young LDS man, age 17, would be 18 now. And then I went to Krista's Facebook page and read some of her blogs about her fine son and about mental health. And I just reached out to Krista and Greg and said, would you be willing to talk about Luke on the podcast? And they said yes. And this is a great way to honor Luke. And we said a prayer before we started, and I just pray that you'll feel the love and the insights and the spirit of Greg and Krista as they talk about Luke and the healing understanding of the atonement, their insights into mental health, their insights into difficult issues that can help all of us come together. So they're really brave and courageous. We to do this. And tell us first of all, what part of Indiana you're joining us from?
You want to share?
Yeah. We live in Plainfield. It's basically a suburb of Indianapolis. So, and we grew up around here. We're born and raised Hoosiers.
Call ourselves Hoosiers.
Yeah, we've lived all over, but we're from here, and we've been here now for several years. So,
how did you two meet?
We met right in through the Young Single Adult program in our church. So we met at a church dance.
Yep, church dance.
The old-fashioned way.
Attended institute classes together, and so we often tell people the program works.
That is great. And is this high school or is this after high school when you first met?
After. So we went to different schools, and I didn't really know you until after your mission. But so we were going to different colleges around Indianapolis, and we met through the Young Single Adult program. So I was just out of high school actually when we first met, and felt way too young.
And I was only like, I don't know, a week off my mission, and I was a nervous wreck. And my brother introduced us, and she seemed too young at the time.
I felt too young. I thought, it would be years before I was married, and I don't know. I guess it was probably a total of a year and a half after we first met that we were actually married. So
that is great.
So, yeah.
Introduce your 4 children to us.
Go for it.
Our oldest is Kate. She just turned 20 in September, and she's on a mission. She's in Arizona she's been out for a year now. So
Spanish-speaking mission. There.
Yeah, she got trained in the Mexico MTC and is now in Arizona and loving it. And then Luke is our second child. He and Kate were 22 months apart. So they pretty much went through life together. And then
and he would have been a college freshman this year.
Yeah, so he had his birthday would have been in July, and that was his 18th birthday. So he was a senior when he passed away. And then Bryn is 15. She's a sophomore this year. And so she and Luke were actually in the same high school together last year. And then we have our youngest is Ryan. He's 11, and he'll
be moving up in the Aaronic priesthood this year.
He's a 6th grader. He's
turn of the year.
He's in middle school now, and so he's still an infant to me, but he's 11.
Yeah.
You're a beautiful family.
Baby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful family, and love all 4 of your kids. Talk about Luke, and just sort of, as I've read some of your blogs, just you started to recognize depression and mental illness. Just talk with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say, in some ways, of all of our kids, he was kind of wired a little differently. Like we always kind of knew he was a little bit different. He had a lot of anxiety off and on.
Yeah, I think we had his second grade teacher one time pulled us aside and like, he seems a little bit anxious, and we hadn't really paid that much attention to it, but then we could kind of see, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, off and on. He was able to do everything. He was great in school, really smart. All of our kids are high achievers, but he started having when he really started having problems was in high school. I think his high school years were just really hard for him. I think puberty and high school and the social stuff, it just all hit at once, and he went through a real hard time his freshman year with anxiety, and it got so bad that the end of that year we actually got him a little bit of counseling and ended up getting him on medication to help with the anxiety. And then his sophomore year was a little bit better. The medication seemed to help, but we've talked about this a lot, that the medication also had some side effects, and he just seemed a little more emboldened and a little bit
uninhibited.
And see, he's a very thrill-seeking, like he loves adventure, he loves just experiencing lots of different things, and that's a great part of his personality. But it seemed a little more than usual. Even that year, he seemed a little risky. I don't know.
And we feel like he kind of made some decisions that he normally wouldn't have made, that might have embarrassed him, things like that were unfortunate, but they kind of contributed to the anxiety after that, because it was like a catch-22 with the medication helped with the anxiety, but it also kind of
lowered his inhibitions.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to say it. So he had a rough year that year just because he did. And then we got we all kind of agreed that we could try getting him off the medication, and so we did, and he did fine. And his junior year was
really good year, actually.
Mostly it was a good year. He still had some anxiety here and there, but he was involved in lots of different things. He was always wanting to be involved. Music was his passion. So, orchestra, piano, he just wanted to do it all. In fact, he wanted to literally learn like we had to put limits on what we could take him to and be in, because
we can't afford lessons for everything.
And we had 3 other kids and needed, we couldn't be in 5 places at once. So
we had to put limits on the number of instruments he was learning.
Yeah,
as a high school, what a unique young man.
Yes, very much. And so going into his senior year, he'd come out of a really great year just being involved. I think he was happiest. He was kind of an intense kid in a lot of ways, and so he's actually happiest when he was involved in lots of things. He just needed his brain to be occupied and learning stuff, and just.
And he got his first job. He was he was always this is the neat kind of story about him. He was the kind of kid that he would always shoot for the moon, and he looked at where all of his friends were working and how much they were getting paid, and he realized that the highest paying job around was Walmart cashier. And so he applied for Walmart cashier just because he wanted to make the most money, and he got that job, and he was always trying to get promoted, and he
wasn't eligible for any promotions because of his age, and I told him that, and he'd
apply anyway.
He just thought, what does it hurt to ask? I want. So he was just a really ambitious and fun kind of kid in that way. And so he was coming out of a great year. He actually did, what was it? He did
drum corps, or what they call winter percussion.
Winter percussion, and he kind of got special permission to do that because he was actually in orchestra and he wasn't in band, but they wanted him to.
and he didn't play the drums, but they needed a keyboardist for it.
Yeah, they gave a special, like, really hard solo that he was featured in, and so they made him part of the program, and he loved it, and so we were feeling really good about things, even though he'd had kind of a hard high school career up to that point. But going into his senior year, we were just feeling so good, and that middle of that summer is when he really started showing signs of depression, and it just hit hard and fast, and we can go into more details, but that's when it started. That's when kind of the beginning of the end really for his journey was. So I don't know what you want us to go into at this point.
I thank you for just telling us about Luke. And as I read his obituary, and we'll link to that in the podcast, I encourage, it's a really well-written obituary. Whoever wrote that?
My husband did.
Greg did that. That's something obviously no dad would ever want to write. No parents would ever want to do, but it's just a beautiful obituary. When you talk about this Angel 5, Angels Landing, riding every roller coaster, braving level 5 rapids in West Virginia, all his musical interests, National Honor Society student, straight A. This is just a great young man. Yeah. And I always like to use present terms when I talk about people that have died. I don't like to use the word was in the past because I just don't feel that way. I feel present terms. He is a member of your family. He is all these things still. And his mortal ministry is over, but his essence isn't changed and his eternal plan hasn't changed. And all these beautiful things you talk about him are still part of him. So that's not for you, the Evans. That's just for our listeners, how I try to approach someone who's on the other side now. Talk about when things, and you kind of got into this, just when things you recognize this was really, because there were some things that happened that you realized, and I think did a great job of addressing.
I was home more during the day and got to see him a little bit more. Often he'd work in the evenings when my husband would be home. So I started noticing sleeping a lot. He was sleeping, and he was always one that could sleep a lot. He could nap and he could sleep all night. Like, he was a professional sleeper.
Yeah.
He gets that from me.
He slept with the passion too.
We love to sleep. We love our sleep. But he started really sleeping, and I finally just asked him one day, are you depressed? And he said no. And I really, a lot of times when people hear the word depressed, they think of sad or, feeling hopeless or these emotions. And it's definitely more than that. And so I think he was honest with me. I don't think he felt depressed. I think he didn't know why he was so tired.
Well, and wouldn't you say sometimes the word depression is kind of loaded? You assume if you admit you're depressed, then you're signing up for like weeks and months of therapy, etc. And I think sometimes, a kid like him might not be really upfront with that because they're afraid what might that mean, and I don't have time for that.
Yeah. So I felt like he was probably depressed or something was going on, and so but he was working and making money, and he was excited about all the money he was saving and making, and he had been a little bit stressed because he wanted to do that band, he wanted to do that winter percussion again, but they were going to make him be in the marching band in order to do that again. So what it meant was it was going to be kind of a nightmare for his schedule. He wanted to do it, but it was going to be really hard. And it was, we talked about, okay, you probably can't have your job if you're going to do marching band, at least for these few months, because just, marching band is so rigorous of a schedule. And so he had to make a decision. And so I just thought that was probably stressing him out. And he finally made the decision to not do marching band, stay in the orchestra and do his job.
And he was in a area youth orchestra as well, Indianapolis Youth Orchestra, that that took a lot of time too. So
yeah. So again,
he was busy.
He was always in so much. So I was actually relieved that he decided to not do the band as well. But it was a decision he made, and I thought, well, he'll feel better now that he's made the decision and he's making money, which is what he wanted. Anyway, I think the start of the school year went okay. I actually remember going out to lunch with a friend and saying, this is the first start of a school year in his high school. So this is the start of the senior year. I said, this is the first start of a school year that I actually feel good.
Yeah.
Like nothing crazy,
Ironically.
nothing, difficult has come up with him. And I was so relieved. And, the irony is painful, but I felt really good. And it wasn't but a few weeks into the school year that he actually made a kind of a suicide attempt, but it was not a real serious one, but it was enough that I don't know if you want to give more on that, because you kind of dealt with that.
Yeah, well, what's kind of neat is our daughter, our younger daughter, Bryn. I feel like she really was in tune with the Spirit during this time, and she would get promptings like, I need to check on Luke. Like this first time we were at Ryan's soccer game, and Bryn she was home with Luke, and she had an impression to check on him, and she caught him in this first suicide attempt, and she texted us and let us know what was going on, and we hurried home.
We were at a soccer game with with Ryan, and so we came home, and we had never dealt with anything like this. We had no idea what to do. I mean, he wasn't harmed, so.
I didn't really know what to do, but I had a conversation. We were really close with our stake president, and we had actually had a meeting with him, I think just the day before or a couple of days before.
Really recent, yeah.
And so he knew what was kind of going on with Luke and everything, and I didn't know who else to call, so I called him. I said, "What do I do? This happened today," and he gave me really good advice. He said, call your insurance company, ask them where to take him, that they will cover. And so I didn't know to do that. So I called the insurance company and said, here's what's going on. Where can I take him? And they gave me a list of providers in the area. And I just took him to one right then. And they were open 24 hours. They got him in right away for an evaluation. And
yeah, because at this point he didn't need hospital treatment. Like he was fine, but he needed a psychiatric evaluation. And this first one, I feel like we thought it was kind of a half-hearted attempt as well, but they must see a lot of these, and they just felt like it wasn't too big of a deal. Just get him in some counseling, and
they gave us a list of counselors in our area that we could look into. And
yeah, and so I'm trying to remember the timeline. Did we get him into the program at that point, or
we tried to get him into just a counselor that they had given us from their list, and before we could get him set up with someone, we got a phone call from the school counselor saying that another student had reported that he was talking about suicide at school. And so she said, because of this, we really can't have him in school until you get him evaluated. And this
had only been a week, less than a week since the first incident. So we knew at this point, this is really urgent that he get real care, and we had to get him evaluated again before they'd let him back into school. And at that point, that counselor felt like, 2 incidents where he's really talking about it or making some action toward this, that's pretty serious. So let's get him into a treatment facility. And at this point, they actually wanted him in the partial hospitalization program, where it was, I think, 6 hours a day for 5 days. Well, about a week, but
he'd leave school. He'd go to a couple periods of school, and then he'd leave for
the rest
of the
actually,
day.
Yeah, I think he missed most of school for that.
Yeah.
Week. So, so he went through all of that, and they evaluated him, all throughout, and felt like he was making progress. And then he was about to be downgraded to the next level down, which is the intensive outpatient program, where it's just a few days a week, but it's for 3 hours each time.
So, meaning that they felt like he was doing a lot better.
Yeah, that 1 week was very helpful. And then they were going to step him down to the next thing, which would last for several weeks. Before he got into that next level down, he made a pretty serious suicide attempt, and we had to take him to the ER. And he was in the hospital, just for a day. And then they determined he needed to go into an inpatient facility, he needed more care than, and needed to be safe. And so at that point, he went in directly into a week of inpatient care at a youth psych unit of the hospital.
And you're doing a good job. And one of the things that there's no owner's manual for this. I love all the decisions you're making. I love your stick presence advice. I just love how honest you are, that you've never been prepared for this sort of situation. I think that would be true of me and true of our listeners. So we're just all really grateful you're sharing your story. And I still think of this as a success story. I don't think this is as a failure story. I think I think you've done great decisions the whole way. And I think you'll help us to understand what was at the core of this is emotional illness. Mm-hmm. So It sounds like this inpatient was good. And that's a pretty dramatic thing. You've gone from anxiety you've gone from the beginning of the senior year with a lot of hope and a history of anxiety and some depression. And now you've got a wonderful son that's inpatient for a whole week after a suicide attempt to put him in the ER. So this is really scary.
Yeah.
And so go ahead and just and things kind of get better. So go ahead and keep sharing.
Yeah. And at this point, one thing we hadn't done at this point, we'd been working with the therapist and a psychiatrist. When you go into that partial hospitalization program, they make you work with a psychiatrist, and they had felt at that point that therapy was enough for him. Learning the skills and tools and trying to work through some of this was going to be enough. And then when he ended up in the hospital, they felt like, obviously we're dealing with a severe depression, and we need to also look at medication as another tool to help in this. And so at that point, we decided to, and he agreed, to try medication as well. And I bring that up because everyone has different opinions on that. And some wondered if, the medication could have been a factor, a cause even of it. But one thing that we point out is he was suicidal
before
he was ever on the medication. So it was something we felt needed to be added. And we worked with a psychiatrist the entire time who was also getting to know him and felt like this was another layer of support that we could give to him. And it wasn't going to be something they wanted to do forever, but it was definitely going to be a layer of treatment. And I just like to say that because we don't judge anyone for any of their, how they make those decisions, but we do feel like if you need it, it's absolutely, don't feel any shame about it. I mean, it's a wonderful tool. And so I think starting the medication and getting him all that help in the inpatient. And of course, after that, he stepped down to their intensive outpatient and did that for several weeks. And I think, we could talk on and on about that period, but we saw gradual improvement.
And a big element of the outpatient program was working with the family too. They would have us come, I think was it twice a week that we came for or was it once?
Once a week.
Once a week.
Group
family therapy. So all of the patients and their parents would be there. And as part of that, they had you write a family contract where you kind of work together on, here's what kind of restrictions we need to put to help you, just various things that we all agreed on and signed. And then when he eventually came home, we would abide by that contract to help keep him safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what else you want to add.
Yeah, so he was working to gain back trust, for safety reasons, and we were working on our relationship with him. I mean, it had become strained and for a while, but again, not having a manual for how to be a parent, we didn't know what's normal teenage,
right,
issues with your parents and what
Mm-hmm.
is something more severe, and so that was something we were working on. It was our relationship trying to get back to a place where he was able to be open and share what was going on with him, and so we're making all these steps, and I do feel like it's always kind of 2 steps forward and maybe 1 step back. Sometimes it's not a perfect progression, but we felt concerned, but good. Like we felt like we were heading in the right direction, and all this time, by the way, that he was in this treatment, Kate, our daughter, our oldest, was preparing for her mission. She had gotten her mission call right before all this happened, and
we felt bad. We were really neglecting her as far as all the stuff you have to buy and all the things you have to do to prepare for a mission. We were kind of like, you're on your own right now. We need to deal with Luke right now. So.
And she likes to be prepared, and she likes to know what's going on. And it was just such a mess, the poor thing. And so, but we felt good. Like we sent her off. I don't think I would have sent her off on a mission. She wouldn't have wanted to go if we thought we were just weeks away from, our son passing away. So we felt like things were heading I guess you kept saying we'd turned the corner. We felt like we had turned the corner.
And he'd gotten released from the outpatient, what did you call it? Intensive
IOP.
Yeah.
I've learned all these terms now.
He met all the milestones or whatever where they said, we think he's good to go home, but you need to make sure to get him established with the individual counseling, which we did.
Yeah, we got him in with a doctor to monitor the meds and a therapist to start the journey of more of the interpersonal stuff that he would be working through, and we knew it would be months, probably the rest of his senior year of work, but we felt like he was, like you said, meeting all the milestones and
what's really kind of speaks to his character, Richard, is imagine being pulled out of school in your senior year and doing all that therapy. He was missing all of his classes in his homework, and he got really far behind. And when he got back, we met with the school counselor. What do we do to keep him on track for graduation?
Well, the school counselor was extremely concerned.
Yeah, they thought, he's in trouble.
He'll have to drop classes. Here's what we can do. He was trying to make a plan that would barely get, Luke graduated, and but Luke wasn't going to have it. He said, I can catch up. Like, I know I can. And
he caught up.
He did.
And he caught up.
Our oldest daughter was extremely smart, took all the same classes, and she said there's no way I could have.
He was taking AP classes, everything advanced.
He did drop one class, but it wasn't even going to affect. He was still going to get the academic honors diploma, even with dropping that class. So that's why I say in all caps, like when I write about him, we were proud of him. He pulled through. He just makes it happen. And so he was on track. He was actually applying for colleges after he got out of all of the most time-consuming therapy. When he was able to start getting back into his classes and stuff, he also applied to 4 colleges. I think he got accepted to at least 1 or 2 before he passed away. So I know I'm sure, but he ended up getting into all 4.
He wanted to study music.
He was going to be a piano performance major. So also that year, he had talked to his the music teacher at school and asked, "What do I need to do to be good, like to play for college, to audition for colleges?" And she said, "You need to learn Rachmaninoff."
Yeah,
like the hardest stuff to learn. And he, at that point, because he was in so much stuff, we didn't actually have a piano teacher for him. The last couple of years, he didn't have a piano teacher. He taught himself Rachmaninoff, several of those pieces, and he was preparing. So that's another thing that I feel like makes our story a little bit unique. He was totally planning for his future.
Yeah, it didn't appear that he was giving up. He was making plans for the future and saving his money and
I'm reading a little bit here as we're leading up to the day he passed away. In a blog post you shared on the 18th of January of 2020, so it's roughly 2 months. The reality is he died of an illness, depression. He did not choose this illness. He did not but he did willingly go into treatment for it. It's an illness like cancer is an illness. Cancer is usually treatable, but sometimes the body does not respond, or sometimes it can be in remission and comes back. It's not that the person wasn't fighting hard enough. It's a complicated disease. So it is with mental illness. Luke was fighting a life-threatening illness that took his life. There is no shame in that. In fact, considering all he was dealing with, it's amazing he kept up his grades, held a part-time job, and was involved in 2 orchestras. The week before he passed away, he performed at the Hilbert Circle Theater. He was also rehearsing with the pit orchestra for the high school musical. He played the organ at church. The day before he died, he was trying, he was fighting, and we are so proud of him. And that's the only word in all caps, listeners, in this whole blog post is the word proud. We are proud of him. We didn't realize how much pain he was enduring. I think Luke has seen this blog post and knows your hearts and thoughts. And I think you talking about him like that helps him feel the same about him on the other side. And I just love that paragraph and your understanding of mental illness and how that's helping all of us and that he was doing well. I think the night he passed away, he went to a 4-hour rehearsal that evening. I don't know if you did another, when I do posts with parents whose son died by suicide, one of the things I try not to do is in my mind define him by how he died. There's a natural side of my brain that would want to know, well, how did it happen? And then as I've been in this space longer, I thought that's not really what I need to know because I want to learn about Luke. And so I kind of leave it up to the parents how much they want to share about that actual day. You've done a whole blog post on that day. It's dated July 9th, and you kind of go through everything that happened. I'll just leave that up to you, what you want to talk about on November 18th, that actual day he passed away.
Yeah, we can talk about the week leading up to it even.
Sure, and that's fine too.
He was, even with all the other things he was doing, he decided he needed to be in the pit orchestra for the musical. So this
performing Peter Pan, I think it was.
Peter Pan. The week before, the week before the musical was supposed to be is Tech Week, and that's the longest rehearsals. Everyone that's been involved in theater knows what Tech Week is. It's kind of a nightmare. But so rehearsals were from 5 to 9 in the evening, and Monday, the day he died, was the first day of Tech Week, and so he was gonna go to that rehearsal. And actually, at this point we were only letting him drive. He had his license and a car, but we were only letting him drive to school or to work for his safety. He actually cared a lot about school, and he cared a lot about his making money. So those were places we felt pretty safe with him going. And I will admit, sometimes I followed him to make sure he did go there. But and I'd drop him off at work. And then I'd run into Walmart and grab some milk just to make sure he was really there working.
He caught me one time. He said, Dad, why were you following me like a police officer?
That's great.
Terrible. But yeah, we just felt like those were things we wanted to give him the chance to do. We felt good about that. But this was a rehearsal at the high school, and he begged us to let him drive to it. I don't think I think it was just because he didn't want to be picked up when everyone else was driving home, and that. So he
texted me at work. Then we kind of texted back and forth about it, and we both felt good about it, like it should be fine.
This was the first time he had actually had an activity at the school that wasn't, school or work. So there was no big consequence if he wasn't there. So we were kind of nervous about it, but we decided to let him drive. And, basically he didn't come home. But we did find out he went to the whole rehearsal. And we
talked to some of the other people in the orchestra, and one girl shared that at one point during the rehearsal, Luke had asked to borrow her pencil so that he could make notes in his sheet music. And then another girl who she used to be in the orchestra with him, was texting with him because we've seen the texts on the phone, and he said, "Oh, you should join the orchestra with us." And she was saying, "Oh, it's too late." And he's like, "No, they'll take you. I'll make sure they let you." And
he's like, "You can learn it."
So all this stuff does not sound like someone that thought he was going to die that night. He was.
No, I really, we'll never know. That's the hard thing about suicide grief, but we really, all evidence points to he was not planning this. We feel like it was very much an impulsive decision, and we don't know why. There was no note, there was no anything, but
and we have confirmation from the music director. He was at the entire rehearsal. He finished the whole
and the time of death definitely makes it clear he left the rehearsal, and there wasn't much more that happened. So but in his car, the police searched his car, and in his car the only thing that was there was his cello and his music, and that that pretty much sums him up. That was his life. And but yeah, I don't very often talk about exactly what happened, more because I just don't.
Good.
Yeah. I'm not like.
I think Luke would rather have you talk about his cello and the texting he was doing that night to invite somebody in. And we were. I just think you honor Luke by not having to talk about that.
Yeah, and he made. We just don't think he really planned this out, and the coroner. We were talking about this earlier. The coroner said something odd to us when we went to get his things. She said that she said sorry, and she was sad for what happened, but she said that she had hoped that maybe the toxicology report would find drugs or something that would help give an explanation to it. And I don't know why she thought that would comfort us or be a good thing, but it was complete. We knew it would be clean. It was completely clean. There was no substance, there was nothing found in his car and nothing in his body, and again, it was his cello and actually inside, and his music, his Peter Pan music, and inside the cello was a little note card that he had.
Yeah, it was notes from President Nelson's youth devotional.
He had taken notes and somehow shoved it in his cello case at some point, and
that was the only thing in the cello case.
That was all. Yeah, it just, I don't know. As a mom, it kind of warmed my heart that that was in there. Like, at least he had thought about that at some point and taken notes enough to, because he struggled a lot. At the end, his feelings toward the depression just, it changed him, and he was making progress, but we also saw signs that he had really been traumatized, or, I'm not sure what happens when, depression starts darkening your mind, but he had questioned and finally decided, I don't think God lives. I tried everything. I prayed. I've done all these things to find out if he really is there, and I don't think he is. And
we've subsequently found journal entries from that summer before, where it was evident that he was trying as hard as he could to gain a testimony, and we caught him a few times in his room praying.
He'd get so mad.
he'd get embarrassed and mad, get out of here. But we could tell he was making an effort, and he was trying his hardest.
Yeah, he was trying to figure things out, and so it was neat to see, I guess, in his cello case that little card was in there.
Yeah,
I love that, and a couple of things. One of my favorite cellists is Stephen Sharp Nelson, from the Piano Guys, and he happens to be our Elders Quorum president. And I just mentioned him. I was doing this podcast, and he said the fact that he sent me a text back for you guys, and I'd like to read just part of it to you. The fact that Luke is a cellist will only sweeten this symphonic connection across the veil. And I love that Luke is still a cellist, and that connection will be part of his connecting with you and his love of music, and that skill he takes with him to the next life. I'm also I love where you had several spiritual impressions, including one of your children. But the night he passed away, you didn't feel any of that. And you write, things were much better now. Why didn't we get the same warning feelings this day? We will never know. We did find out, like you said, he went to that 4-hour rehearsal and stayed the entire time. But somehow a loving Heavenly Father at times felt impressed in this situation, and to not give you any warning signs. And I think that's just, to me, the beauty and the complications of this plan of salvation, because he could have brought Luke home that night. We all know he had the power to do that, and he could have warned you. He could have. And you've done all the right things leading up to this point. You weren't perfect, but you did all the right things, I think. And you, inpatient, medication, counselors, just complete 24/7 dedication to this kid, and recognize he's doing better, and he's functioning at a really high level, and he's playing the organ in church. And so any thoughts on why a loving Heavenly Father didn't step in on this night that he passed away?
Yeah, that's actually one I'm still wrestling with. And I feel like, for me personally, like my testimony's really taken a beating the last year. And
it's honest.
I still have a testimony, and I talked to my bishop. I think just like last week, he came over and we talked for like 2 hours, and I told him some of the things I was struggling with. But I told him I feel like the core of my testimony is intact, but this kind of set a nuclear bomb on everything else. And that's one that I don't understand why the Holy Ghost took the night off that night. It
took the night off. I like that line. It
perplexes me so much. Like why all these other times were we warned, and that night we actually felt the opposite. We felt calm and not to worry. And then,
Kate, our daughter, she's on a mission, and sometimes I feel like missionaries are just so close to the Spirit, and maybe they have insights that we don't have. And she also has changed a little bit through all of this. And she said, I don't tell people that God will always answer your prayers. She said, I tell people, and maybe I'm not quoting her right, but the part I really like is, she said, I tell people God has a plan. And so she said, if you pray for something and it doesn't happen, he has a plan. And so with Luke, I just feel like we don't know why we couldn't have stopped him, why we didn't feel those feelings or do something to intervene, or why someone didn't intervene, or, but I do feel like in the moments, maybe the weeks after, when I really wrestled with that, I felt a lot of peace that God welcomed him home, and not that his life was supposed to end then, or that is the ideal in any way, but that God welcomed him home, and that was all that was all Luke could do. Those 17 years, I don't know, like, we don't have all those answers, but I love my daughter's faith that God has a plan. And my testimony has been a little bit shaken as well, but my testimony of Christ has actually strengthened, because I feel like the whole point of Christ, being a savior, is to give us hope. And that hope doesn't end at, it's not just this life that we have hope to change and be better, like that continues forever. So we feel like, Luke was only 17. He had so much more of life to learn and grow and progress, but he's just doing that now. He's doing it there. He's doing it on the other side.
And his patriarchal blessing speaks of things that hadn't happened yet. And I believe those are yet to happen, in the next life for him.
We feel like, I don't know if this was the plan. Like, obviously that would be really confusing, but we feel like there is a plan. Like, whatever happens, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ he can fix anything we mess up in our lives. He can fix anything, that life itself, that just things that happen, mental illness that just happens. You don't choose it. Like, a lot of things that are just part of this mortal experience, they can be fixed, they can be worked out. And that's where I put my faith. That's all I know.
Thanks for being so honest. I think I would think most parents would share some of the same things you've had when, and I think you said take a beating, Greg. I kind of like that. I just think that's honest, and I don't know I don't know if our culture kind of creates that if we do all the right things as parents. I call it the vending machine mentality, that if we put the right coins in the vending machine and we press C3, which is kind of the outcomes we want for our kids, those old fashioned vending machines where you can press the numbers like C3. And there's that little waiting period when you kind of watch C3 to see if it starts turning. And that's sort of the teenage years. And then most people, if they're all lined up in the vending machines, most of them are getting C3, but some parents get a different outcome. And D4 comes out. And I think sometimes culturally we think we can conclude we put the wrong coins in. It's our fault. And because I think we kind of have this, we want to do the right things as parents, and you've done the right things as parents. But then when something doesn't come out, it's just, when I've got to take a little drink of water. It's difficult, because I think we've sort of thought that if we do all the right things will happen. And then we don't have the tools to sort of deal with that. And our testimonies take a beating. But sometimes also our relationship with the Savior and our understanding of the plan of salvation, loving heavenly parents, also it grows. So I just honor where you are. And I would never give you any advice, because I'm not walking your road. And just would sort of put my hands on your back and say, I trust you as you're walking a pretty complicated road. And more thoughts. There's a lot of questions in my mind. I'd love to have you talk to other parents that are just on this road. You've been on this road for a year, and it's a road obviously you don't want to be on. What advice would you give to parents that are just newly on this road?
Good question.
Yeah. I think
I'd say don't do it during COVID-19.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, that's made it harder. I think what I've learned about grief, and I've never had, we've lost grandparents and things that are the natural kind of course of life that are sad, but not as complicated. I think I've learned that your body and your mind kind of tell you what you need. Like I learned to not worry if, 3 months in I had kind of a breakdown. I just had a really hard time about 3 months after, and I didn't know why. And I learned like it's not a linear process, and I needed to feel. I felt just a lot of sadness and anger, at different times, and I've kind of learned whatever you're feeling, you need to kind of just let it happen and let it get through you, and don't, like, be kind to yourself in all of this. You're dealing with something that you've never dealt with, and I certainly didn't know anything. And
yeah, for me, I think the spiritual side of it has been the hardest. Like, it's become really hard to say a coherent prayer. I mean, I still try my best to say prayers, but they just, my mind's all over the place. Church is really hard to go to, and I just say be patient with yourself. People understand. Like, I think today was the first day we went back to church in person since COVID-19, and that's actually been a good a benefit, kind of, I guess, to the pandemic, is that we haven't had to be at church every Sunday. We could kind of worship in our own way at home, and that's really helped me a lot. But I'd say if you do feel a disconnect spiritually, to not beat yourself up over it. It's kind of part of it. And
yeah,
it's really honest. Greg, talk about why going to church is hard.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out with my bishop, and I think it's because there's a lot of things when you go through. Well, we haven't really touched on this, but another element is that our son Luke was gay, and kind of that combined with the way he died, and just all of those things bring a lot of spiritual questions to the surface that maybe in the past I hadn't dealt with, or I just put them on the shelf. It doesn't affect me right now, and now I have to think about them and work through them. And going to church brings all those up to the surface, and it's painful and hard. And people will make comments that they don't intend to be hurtful, but they'll hurt you. And so
we're a church that believes so much in eternal families, and we started to question,
yeah,
when we'd hear those things, or like you said, if you do X, Y, and Z, then your family will follow the right path or whatever. And maybe that's a formula we make up in our minds that's not reality, but we sort of think that. And so now we're like, well, we have, suicide, and we have this, and we have, and he was losing his testimony at the end. And so what does that mean for him? We just had all these things, and all of these talks that used to be kind of comforting and feel goody, all of a sudden hurt. Like, they were actually painful.
And I'd say also, we're people that we've sacrificed a lot in church service. Krista was Relief Society president for 3 years. And then immediately when she was released as Relief Society president, I got called as Elders Quorum president. And that kind of went up until Luke's senior year started. And at that time, I kind of realized that things were starting to go south with Luke. And I talked to my stake president whether he thought I might need to be released. And he did end up releasing me. But when in both of our cases, when we were called to our callings, we were apprehensive because of the time away from the family, and we were assured, even promises were made, your family will not suffer from this. The sacrifices that you make in this calling, your family will not suffer. And it's kind of hard to, how did looking at the result in our family, that doesn't seem like that promise was fulfilled. It seems like we sacrificed that time that maybe we could have been spending more time with the family, and maybe things might have been different. And so all of those things kind of combined to make church kind of difficult for me, at least.
Thanks for just being honest. I'm glad you feel safe enough to share that with me and with our listeners. My respect for both of you just kind of goes up when you're honest like that. I think really faithful Latter-day Saints deal with really difficult issues. And there's no way I could I could give you a platitude, Greg, and say, well, it'll all work out in the next life, but your son's gone.
Yeah.
And you were promised that basically that wouldn't happen. And if I need to sit with you in that pain, if I'm going to help at all, instead of dismiss it or explain it away or send you a conference talk, I just need to sit with you and how painful that is and validate that and recognize I don't really know that pain directly, but it's real and it has to just eat at you at times. And I think that would just be my intuition. And to me, that doesn't drive any wedge between you and the church any deeper, whatever little wedge there is right now. It just, to me, might help you be able to move on and reconcile that sort of unreconcilable dichotomy of that experience. And but help us understand, if you open up with somebody, just give us some counsel or advice. What is the best things that we could say as you open up with some of those really complex, honest feelings? If you open up with a priesthood leader, a friend in the church, what can we say that's helpful?
You have any thoughts on that?
I mean, what I've had to do with myself is be compassionate with myself and patient with myself, just in terms of my grieving. You know, and so I would say for anyone else, be compassionate and patient with your loved ones that are, that might be going through this kind of a either grieving or even before. I mean, I felt like my trauma was just as strong when Luke was in treatment as after he died. It threw us into a shock like I had never ever experienced, and the reality that my son might not want to live or that could do this to himself. And
in a weird way, after he passed, it was sort of a relief because we weren't worrying every day about was his life at risk.
There was a period of time where it did feel actually a little bit of a relief.
That doesn't mean you don't love him and you don't want him there, but that's just an honest emotion. I get that.
I think our bishop set a really good example last week. He came and just spent 2 hours with me, just listening to me, and I didn't invite him. He just called and asked if he could come meet with me, and it was nice just to have somebody listen, without, like you were saying, don't give me a conference talk, don't tell me platitudes, just listen, and it's just talking about it makes me feel better, just getting it out.
And I think in the weeks after, the most comforting thing that anyone ever did for me was whenever they expressed how sad they were that Luke was going through all this. Like, after he died, everyone realized how serious this, how much he really must have been struggling. And that comforted me more than I didn't need my own comfort. I wanted someone to acknowledge the pain my son was in. And
it's interesting.
Loving Luke was meant more to me than putting your arms around me and telling me, because I think I didn't realize enough or as much until after he died how much he really was, the turmoil in his mind. And so that was the most comforting thing to me, was when people said, I'm so sorry for what Luke must have been going through. I think my grief for the first few months was more focused on him and grieving him, his pain, not so much my own.
Yeah, and I think I would add, I've been a home teacher for years, being in the church, and what's the last thing you say at the end of every home teaching visit? It's, what can we do for you? And usually they say nothing. But, you get a lot of that after going through what we have. What can we do for you? And I think we don't really know what you can do for us. I mean, I'm just grieving. I don't know what I need and don't need. The kind of things that have meant the most to me have been when people just do something. We had a family for Luke was a senior, and because of COVID-19, everybody was concerned that the seniors weren't having a normal graduation, and that was hard for us because we knew our son wasn't going to be at graduation. So, but they were doing a lot of things to make the seniors feel special, since their senior year was different. And the school came out and put yard signs in every senior's yard, and they included us.
That's cool.
And then, one of the families at church who had a senior, they realized, because they were doing something where they were sponsoring other seniors, and they'd like bring a care package to this, another family's senior. And this other family remembered us and brought a care package for Luke with, it had like types of candy that he liked, and just, it was so thoughtful.
What they would have done what someone would have done if he was alive, all the cutesy fun stuff that he would have liked.
And if they had asked, what can I do for you, I wouldn't have said, please bring us a care package or put a yard sign in our yard. I wouldn't, you would have felt weird even asking for something like that. But it was so touching that they just did something.
Yeah.
So,
I love those stories. I love the idea that everybody is remembering Luke and loves Luke, and how healing that is to you. Yeah, people want to reach out to you and help you, but I love the way talking about Luke, honoring Luke, acknowledging the pain that he felt and the goodness that he is, somehow is healing to you. That's very helpful for me. I love what you wrote about Luke being gay, and this post, Krista, in January. Another factor we want to share is that Luke was gay. He was not dating and was only semi-open about it. He was still trying to figure out that part of himself. We had known for several years, and he was open with us about it. I think it's a credit to you, by the way, that he felt safe enough to open up to you. So, and it sounds like he was 15. Now I'm back to the blog. He was not very public about it, would sometimes deny it if asked. We were never ashamed of him for being gay. He knew he loved us unconditionally. We didn't share this publicly because he was when he was alive, because it was his story to share. We share it now, so we will state there was no widespread bullying that we're aware of or has been rumored, but rather some isolated incidents, and his sexual orientation was not a major factor in his treatment. There were many other factors, and that one was towards the bottom of the list. So please don't assume that this is why he took his life. Suicide is not that simple. There is no one reason. The simplest reason in Luke's case is depression and mental illness. Mental illness defies logic. Sick brains process things differently than healthy brains. It's pointless to say, why didn't someone just tell someone, or fill in the blank? And so I love that. And I love just that you brought that up, Greg. And I think somehow, Luke, it honors Luke that you publicly talked about this part of himself, because I just believe there's more of a connection between both sides of the veil. And Luke is continually aware of how you talk about him. And the fact that you talked about him being gay and that you're not ashamed of this, I think is somehow helpful to him. That this is how you love every bit about this kid. And you talk about every bit of this kid, and I think it helps heal him. I think he's hurting a little bit. He misses you. He recognizes the mental illness and what resulted. And I think you're healing him with these blog posts and talking about him and bringing honor to him and these pictures. And I just think it's painful, but I think it's wonderful what you're doing. Any more thoughts on that subject? And I love your bishop just came by and spent 2 hours with you. And he just listened. And I think that's just ministering 101.
You asked if we had any additional thoughts, not necessarily on his sexual orientation, but just like what you were saying about continuing to, tell his story. And, he's still, like you said, he's still with us. Maybe you said that before we went on air, but we talk about him in the present tense. And something that has been important to me, Krista's been doing more of the blogging. I've been doing more of making sure anything that he's earned in life that I follow through and make sure that he gets that thing. So the first thing was I talked to the school about, can he get a high school diploma? He died right before the end of the first semester, and they determined that he'd done enough to earn his high school diploma. And so I worked with the school, and it was an unusual graduation this year. It happened in July, and it was outdoors at the football stadium, but they called his name along with the other graduating seniors. And
Luke Evans.
I feel like if I hadn't have kind of fought for that, I don't know if it would have happened. Another thing is
that's cool.
One of the colleges that he applied to, I think they found out that he had died, and so they never sent a response. And so I decided I wanted to find out if he had gotten in, and so I wrote to them, and they said, oh yeah, he would have been admitted. And so like a lot of us with COVID-19, they were working remotely, but they made the effort to send some people back into the office to put together a welcome packet for him.
That's so cool.
It out. So he officially got accepted to all of his
Tell us the name of some of those colleges he got accepted to.
That one was Indiana University.
Which was one of his top choices.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
And that's I actually got my MBA from there. So
is that in Bloomington? Where is that located?
Yeah, Bloomington.
Okay.
Yes. He applied to University of Indianapolis and got in. Butler University, and then Ball State University, all local Indiana schools. But he got into all of them, and then the other thing I really was important to me was making sure he got his temple work done. And shortly after he died, we saw actually it was at the funeral, we saw the temple president, and we asked him about that, and he said that that if the bishop approved it based on Luke's worthiness before he had died, that we could do the temple work right away. And so we were able to do that. Actually, Kate, our missionary daughter, had to come home for a while because she had gotten sick on her mission. And in the 6 weeks she was home, we got that temple work done, and she got to be there for that. So,
who was proxy for Luke?
I was.
That's cool.
And that was special because not just obviously it was special, but I realized that I had participated in every ordinance that he'd ever received, from blessing him, baptizing, confirming, ordaining him to the priesthood, and his temple ordinances. Every single one, I was the participant in it. So,
wow.
So that,
you know, that's really cool. And I thought of Luke as you were talking about, and I kind of tried to imagine Luke on the other side. And the feeling I got from him is just love for his dad and mom, for all that they continue to do for him. And I think you still have emotions on the other side of the veil. I don't think those go away. I think we're still human on the other side of the veil, and you're still his parents, and he really loves you. And so when you do those kind of things, and maybe we still doubt sometimes on the other side of the veil, do they really love me? Will they forget me? And to see those kind of things, and to see the temple work, and my dad was proxy for me. I wonder how many people Luke told on the other side of the veil that how cool is that? my dad was proxy for me and kind of one-upping people, perhaps. I don't know, but that's pretty cool. And telling people he got into these colleges and that his name was read at his high school graduation and he wasn't forgotten. And I think that's really cool. And I think it helps heal Luke and just knows that you're an eternal family and how grateful he is. And I think he probably knows that, this was mental illness and he knows that his agency was not there, but he knows the pain it's caused. And I think he's grateful for the work you're doing to continue to try to heal from this. Talk about the blog. Tell us the blog name because I want people to read your blog. Krista?
Yes. It's Evans Daily Griefing .blogspot.
.com.
Thank you. .com.
The play on daily briefing.
Yeah. So
but daily griefing.
Evans
Daily Griefing. .blogspot.com.
And I started this totally self-serving reasons. I just needed a place to process my grief. This was so complicated and my emotions were so everywhere, and I just needed to work through some of it. And I wasn't ready for therapy. Everyone has to do things at their own timetable, and I just felt like if I could process through writing a little bit, but I thought it was just going to be for me, and I really thought a few of my closest friends and maybe our family members would read it just out of curiosity. But I've been really overwhelmed with how many people it's connected with and how many people feel like I'm helping them and I'm educating. I had no intention of doing any of that. It was totally for me. I kind of wanted to tell our story, tell Luke's story. And I did want to honor him. And I did feel at times a little bit defensive, and I wanted everyone to know I am proud of him. I'm proud of every part of our journey. It's not something I feel like we should hide or keep quiet about. And anyway, so that's why I did it. But I'm honored and feel grateful that anyone is reading it at all. And just how many people have connected with it and told me thank you for it anyway. So I guess I'll keep doing it.
Keep doing it. I think you're doing it for all the right reasons. And as I read the responses to your blog, there's just a lot of other families that have lost one to suicide and they just get it. And you're helping them with the things you're teaching. And those of us that aren't on this road, you give us great insights. One of the insights you gave me that I'd never picked up is September 10th is World Suicide Prevention Day. But tell our listeners why you like the word awareness better than prevention.
I do, and I never thought of it before we went through all this, but prevention really is, it's a little bit guilt-inducing for those of us who have actually, worked our tails off to keep our kids healthy and alive. And so I do feel like I think it's okay to admit that you can't always prevent. You can do everything you can do. And Luke himself, I think he would have prevented his own demise if he could have. I truly believe he was fighting and working hard and in a moment of weakness, a moment of whatever, whatever happened in his mind, he just couldn't stop it. And I really believe he would have if he could have. And so
I love that. Prevention sort of implies that you can control an outcome, and I don't think that's part of mortality. And I love the way you teach that. And it doesn't mean you don't want to talk about it, and you want to just put everybody's head in the sand and not talk about it. But I love that it's awareness and it's education, and that's what you're doing. One of the most, I've shared this a little bit on the podcast, but sometimes I just get to the 40,000 foot level, the plan of salvation. And that happened once in a blessing to a YSA who had gone to Afghanistan as part of that military assignment, knew he had bombed people, rightly so, but he probably took innocent life, and he was just grieved about that. He probably knew innocent mothers and children had died as part of his military assignment, and he did it's an honorable assignment. He got that, but he just grieved. And as I gave that blessing, I had no words to sort of relieve this for him. But then the words came to my mind that no one's eternal plan or no one's eternal possibilities had changed because of what happened in Afghanistan. That was the actual phrase. No one's eternal possibilities had changed. Mortal possibilities had changed, no question. And that maybe is, I don't want to give you a platitude because that's sort of a platitude and just saying everything's be okay, eventually. But I do sort of, that's the way I feel about this, is that all your hopes and dreams that you've ever had when you held this little kid as a newborn baby, that I think if our heavenly parents could tune in the podcast, Greg and Krista, I think they'd just say, those dreams are still intact. And that every hope you've ever had, why some of the mortal hopes have obviously changed, the eternal hopes that you've had are still intact. And perhaps there's lessons that will come into your family and are coming into your family, that you see the lives your 3 children are living that are here on the earth. And as they become parents and grandparents, they recognize this part of your family chapter has brought great pain, but also great skills that have helped your whole family in ways that you never thought possible, and that you would obviously never wish this on your own family or on others. But, I have to think your daughter on her mission in Arizona is reaching some people in a way that would never be possible if this hadn't happened. I don't think God then made this happen so that she could be a more effective missionary. I don't want to say that.
Right.
Because that just isn't the God I believe in. I don't know. It's just really complex. And you guys should, I don't want to give my personal revelation and say that's what's going on here, but it's just some thoughts. More thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners before we close up?
Do we want to share that story about the trek?
Share more stories.
We have a good story that we feel like does sum up the message we would love to end with, I guess. You want me to?
Okay. So this was it a couple of years ago? Our stake was doing instead of a normal youth conference that year, they were doing a pioneer trek, and it just happened to be that at that same time, Luke was having some problems with his feet. He had a skin condition. He'd been to the dermatologist, and the dermatologist said, you need to keep your feet dry. You can't be doing anything that will aggravate them. And this trek was going to be walking miles and miles, getting your feet sweaty, they were going to have to trudge through creeks and all kinds of stuff. And we finally told Luke, we don't think you can go on this. And we made that decision. And he was really upset about it because Luke, whatever was going on, Luke wanted to be involved. He loved like any kind of adventure or
I don't think he cared about the spiritual part of it so much. He wanted the adventure trek.
Yeah.
So he was really.
But at the time, I was on the High Council, and I was working pretty closely with our stake president, and he, I don't remember how he found out. I must have told him in passing or something that Luke wasn't going to be going on the trek, and he didn't accept that answer. He said, "Oh yes, he is," and he said, "I'd like to." I think this was on a Sunday. He said, "I'd like to come to your house tomorrow and personally invite him to the trek." And he showed up at our house the next day and personally invited Luke to the trek, and he said, "We will accommodate you." And Luke ended up going on the trek, and he got to walk some of it, but usually he was riding in a vehicle. But it was so touching how, he didn't want to leave Luke behind. He recognized Luke had a challenge, but we'd meant no offense to any of the other youth leaders, but they had kind of accepted the fact, well, yeah, he's got this issue, he can't really do the trek. So, but our stake president wouldn't stand for that. He's like, no, we're not leaving any youth behind. He's going to be on that trek.
Tell us your stake president's name.
He's actually, he moved away right before Luke passed away, but his name's Rick Anderson.
Thank you, President Anderson. It sounds like your current stake president's doing a good job too.
He's wonderful too. Yeah. President Jameson.
But yeah, the thing I took away from that was I just felt so overwhelmed with, like, he wasn't going to leave Luke behind. And I actually, there's so much more to our story that we can't share in an hour and a half, but Luke felt left behind in a lot of ways, in different areas of his life, and he wasn't always accepted fully. And he just knowing that someone loved him and wanted him to come, like, he would not leave him behind. And I feel like that's a message to everyone. Like, let's not leave people behind, those that are different, those that feel, if they have mental health issues, if they have, if they're LGBT, or if they have anything that makes them feel a little bit on the outside. Let's don't leave them behind. Let's let them know we'll make a way, and you can be a part of us. And anyway, that's the message I would just love to have everyone always, have and feel. And I'm trying to take that to heart as well for me.
What a great phrase. Let's don't leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
Everybody should feel like they belong. And we need everybody.
And that stake president came back for the funeral and spoke.
Wow.
He flew in from Boston, I think.
Yeah.
I think he had some other things to do as well, but he made time to come and speak at Luke's funeral and spoke of all kinds of good things about our son. It was beautiful.
Would each of you just talk directly to Luke? Would that be okay? Is that too personal?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I loved when you said the prayer before we began. You invited Luke to be here, and I hadn't thought of it that way. So I guess if I could talk to Luke, I mean, I hope everything you said, Richard, today is true. That Luke, I hope you feel our love and feel just how much we're with you, and we support you and just love you. And we are so sad that we can't live the rest of our lives with you, but all I need as a mom is to know that you're happy and you're at peace, and that is all I care about. I wish you could have had that here, but I hope you can have it there, and that's all I want, is your happiness.
Yeah, I'm speaking to Luke, right? So, Luke, I would say everything Mom said. We love you so much. We miss you. I regret as a dad that I was pretty strict on you a lot. I wish I had spent more time expressing how much I love you, and not as much focusing on how you could improve on things. I want you to know that we accept you fully, every part of you, your sexual orientation, everything. And I wish I'd had more time with you to, as I was learning about things like your sexual orientation. I was trying to learn more about that, and I feel like I kind of ran out of time to really handle it the best way I could. But I want you to know that I'm still fighting for you, and I still do everything I can for you while I'm still on this earth, and look forward to being with you again not as soon as possible, but someday.
Oh, that was Thank you. That was really nice.
It was really tender. On behalf of all our listeners, thanks for doing that. Some of your kids are going to use Luke in their names of their kids or middle names. This name of Luke is going to be part of your family and honored in ways that will help heal you and bring all of you. And I just, obviously I can't speak for Luke, but the impression I have is he just loves you. He didn't expect you to be perfect parents. You're the perfect parents for him. And you did. If he just wants you to know that he loves you and you are the perfect parents for him. You don't need to be perfect to do that. And he knows you love him and you did everything you could. And he's okay. He's in a good spot and he's very at peace with his mortal mission and his eternal plan hasn't changed. And he loved having his name called at high school graduation. That, because he earned it. And I love this symphony idea of his music and how that transcends the veil and connects you to him every time you hear the cello and the piano and musical instruments, that's a sign of Luke and your connection with Luke. So on behalf of all of our listeners, I think 10 or 20,000 people are going to listen to this podcast, and you have blessed a lot of people. And I think all of them would love to just look you in the eye and give you a big hug and thank you for being on the podcast and your courage and your faith and your vulnerability and your honesty. And, you're just healing a lot of people. We do use this quote a lot, the wounded healer. A minister's service will not be perceived as authentic unless it comes from a heart wounded by the suffering about which he or she speaks. The great illusion of leadership is to think others can be led out of the desert by someone who's never been there. So the barrenness of deserts last November of 2019, and you just didn't walk out of that desert yet. You're in that desert for life in some ways. That desert at times gets better, but it's just difficult desert. But you're helping other people and giving other people hope, and you're leading them to the edge of that desert where there's just more light and goodness and hope and green. And I think that honors Luke too. For what you're doing in healing and helping other people and bringing more awareness to suicide. So anything else either of you want to share? It's always hard to end these podcasts. Anything else either of you want to share?
I'd just like to thank you, Richard, for all that you do. I found out about your podcast when Stacy Harkey from Studio C came out. I think he had a link to your podcast, and I just became hooked on it. And this was before Luke passed away, and it really helped me prepare for that. And also, because a lot of your podcasts are focused on LGBT issues, it really helped me I even shared some of them with Luke to show him,
Good.
I'm trying as your dad to understand this, and I've been listening to these podcasts, and I think you're doing a wonderful service for everyone. So thank you and I know you don't get paid to do this. You don't have sponsors. Thank you for taking
Greg.
the time and effort to do this.
Thank you, Greg.
For letting us share our story. Suicide is something people are afraid to talk about, and we actually haven't been asked very often to share our story. That's why I think my blog, I needed some outlet, and so I'm really, thank you.
Well, thank you. So this is on behalf of Krista and Greg and Luke Evans. This is Richard Ostler signing off from another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love.